Movie reviews aren't my style, but every once in a while I'll come across one, or in this case, an entire series, that makes me think beyond the movies themselves. YouTube has a movies and TV section where they make a handful of high profile movies available for free for what seems like 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and until recently included among those free movies was the Back to the Future trilogy. So I watched it for the first time. I jotted down 3 pros and 3 cons, and after what will be a somewhat vague review, I'll talk a little bit about the philosophy of time travel. So let's begin with the pros of the Back to the Future trilogy. The first pro is that it's executed well, especially for when it was released. Between the original Star Wars trilogy and Back to the Future, the film industry took a giant leap in graphics between the mid-1970s and mid-1980s. The second pro is that the story that unfolds throughout the trilogy is clever and effectively weaves together overlapping subplots, which I imagine is challenging for writers who care about maintaining continuity. And the third pro is that I found myself emotionally invested in the characters, which is probably the most important element of either creating or consuming film. Okay, now here are the cons. The first is that these movies have a lot of cheesy exposition. Basically, characters saying things for the sole purpose of delivering contextual information to the audience that people would never say in a real-life conversation. And these are the types of moments that make you more aware of the fact that you're watching a film than you want to be as a viewer.
Uncle Jailbird Joy?
He's your brother, Mom.
Yeah, I think it's a major embarrassment having an uncle in prison.
The second con is that much of the plot, especially part 2, requires characters to be completely oblivious to their surroundings. The amount of near misses and characters just not noticing something out of the corner of their eye stops being believable after a while. Like, for example, somehow not noticing someone hiding in the back of your open convertible.
What was gonna be?
I told you it's in this book.
And the last con is, of course, the laundry list of flaws in this series' space-time continuum logic that I'll mostly forgive because these Back to the Future movies are meant to be fast food versions of time travel entertainment. I'm not a metaphysicist or theoretical physicist or anything like that, but it would seem like if you time traveled to either the past or future to change the course of history thereafter, it would be impossible to ever return to a timeline with a history of events different than that of your original timeline without a duplicate of yourself existing, unless you return to a timeline in which you were never meant to be born. It would seem as if the only timeline you can return to as the only existing version of yourself is the very timeline you're trying to escape from, which means that in theory, your current reality could never be altered even if the time travel technology depicted in the Back to the Future series exists. Then there is the philosophy of time travel. Will there ever be a situation in which time travel is actually justified? Because, admittedly, I can't think of a major one off the top of my head. If you're somehow able to travel to the past to alter it in any significant way, chaos theory suggests that you have no way of knowing whether those changes will result in a future that's more favorable than your original timeline. If it's something minor like telling your yesterday self to go to bed earlier so you feel more rested today, that seems like less of an issue. But are minor issues even worth firing up a time machine for?
Oh, Lord, won't you please perform a miracle for this man?
You know what would be a miracle? If I could go back in time 3 hours and say to myself, hey, Jesus, don't eat that barbecued steak sandwich. I guess that's not gonna happen, huh?
I admire Back to the Future's illustration of actions having consequences. I also admire the fact that the theoretical monkey paw lessons in being careful what you wish for are at least somewhat depicted in a movie series that feels about as 1980s as it gets aside from maybe Ghostbusters.